Come with me, I'm going to show you now my creative studio, and this is a space that is entirely my domain, and so you'll find it's a lot less organised than the main space. So the main thing in this studio is obviously the table, and when we moved into the studio I knew I needed a big table because I'm often trying to make quite big projects and I'm also a really messy worker, so I like to have a lot of space. But big tables are really expensive, and so my dad bodged together this one for me, and this is a piece of MDF on top of some pieces of 4x2. It is about as cheap as you can possibly construct a table. This is just the standard size of an MDF sheet, and so obviously it wasn't particularly aesthetically appealing. Therefore, when we first moved into the studio, spent a long time painting this table decoratively to make it a proper feature in the room. I'm not at all precious about it. I love the idea of the table getting worn over the years and kind of having layers and layers of paint over the table, so the design slowly starts sinking into years of creative activity. And so you'll see in certain areas, like down this end, there's loads of paint marks now on top of the decorative painting, because this is often where I sit and paint frames. We run quite a lot of workshops and activities in the studio, and so this is a space where we all sit, and so it's really lovely to have such a big communal table to be at. Over behind me here are all the shelves filled with any source of inspiration I want to use. There's a lot of books, and I'm a bit of a fiend for a good second-hand bookshop. It's possibly one of my favourite activities in the world, is going to a used bookshop, and I've found some absolute gems over the years in used bookshops. So this one, Cake, is one of my absolute favourites. It's all in Russian, so I have actually no idea what it's about, but it's full of these sort of mural miniatures, and there's just hundreds of images throughout. This is a constant source for me of colour inspiration. So every single one of these books has either been bought new, or a lot of these are all second-hand. The other type of book I'm quite obsessed with are sort of 1990s old craft books. So I have a load of these sort of crafting guides which are full of totally mad projects, but actually a really good source of crafting ideas and a really good source of little tips and tricks to how you can make your own things. And so it's off the back of one of these books that I made up here this paper mache vase. Was a project I saw after reading one of these books all about paper mache. So these are an amazing reference material for me, and definitely one if you're thinking about getting into the second-hand book game. There are absolutely hundreds and hundreds of different ones of these online. If you have followed us on Instagram for a while, you know I'm quite a dabbler in a lot of crafts, and so this is where I store a load of materials from all my different crafting hobbies. So I've got sort of partially done lino cuts in here. I've got boxes of oil pastels down here. Here's some ceramic fish I made. It's full of all sorts of absolutely random crafting supplies, felt swatches and kind of fabric fixative glues. Now, it's not an overly organised assortment of stuff. This bag is a guilty bag. This is where I store basically all the paints, inks, anything I might possibly want for a painting activity. And if I show you, look at this, this is absolutely chock-a-block here with all sorts of different things. What I hate is if you think you want to do a new project and you suddenly feel creative and you want to make something and then you find you don't have the materials. It's one of my most hated things, so I'm absolutely addicted to buying art supplies. Right at the top of these shelves up here, you see there's this framed plate, and this was by a ceramicist called Rabina Jack, and it was actually my 30th birthday present from my parents. Don't worry, it's actually very secure and stable up there. But it's been there for ages because I'm going to decoratively paint the frame, and I just haven't got round to it yet. So usually I sit at the other side of the table, I look up at that and I think, God, I really must get on and paint that. When I first moved into the studio, this room was entirely white, but it felt a bit stark, and so I wanted to try and make the walls look the same colour as the bricks. So I decided to paint them all this colour, but I didn't buy anywhere near enough paint to paint the whole way up, and also my ladder was far too short, and so I got to about this height before I started running out of paint. And so the scalloped edge on our painting up this wall is not at all intentional at the beginning, but was purely a factor of just running out of paint. However, it's worked out really well, because you'll see around the top of the room there's little painted plates with lots of people's names on. Each of my friends painted one when I had my hen do just before getting married. It was my hen do activity that I forced everyone through, but now it means I get a keepsake around the top of the room of every single woman in my life who's really important to me, and I get to be surrounded by them every day, so that's super special to me. The more I stitch, the more I paint, the more space I need, and so the amount of times I have rehung this wall is ridiculous. But every single time I have to squeeze everything just a little bit closer together to try and fit all our pieces in. And the vast majority of these are all kits. Some of them aren't, some of them haven't made the cut, some of them might make the cut one day, but you see that we've totally filled up all different areas of the wall, and so I'm now really running out of space. And that's why you'll also find everywhere around the room there are pieces propped up all over the place. There's pieces propped up by a chair, pieces by the window, pieces everywhere you look. There's basically an embroidery propped up, because I don't know what to do about my lack of wall space. One of my other favourite pieces that I have is this rag rug, and this was made by an artist who's up in Yorkshire called Lou Mason. In case you haven't gathered already, I've got a bit of a nautical obsession, and so I commissioned Lou to make me this banner of a ship, but it's quite heavy, and so I haven't yet got round to putting it up, but that's basically because I need my dad to come down here and do the job of a good facilities manager and put my artwork up on the wall for me. The notice board is not really what I actually use very often. I actually tend to keep all my inspiration just in folders. This is a lot more a decorative display. A lot of these pieces haven't changed on here for about 2 years, so I would be lying if I told you I beautifully pin up all my ideas on my notice board. So over here on this cupboard we have a load of pieces that are works in progress. So loads of kind of embroidery designs that I've yet to frame, that are finished but need framing. And then in here is where I store a load of fabric that I bought specifically for embroidering on. So there's all sorts of really, really lovely fabrics in here that at some point I'm going to get round to creating an embroidery on. So this is sort of my personal fabric stash, whereas in the main bit of the studio I showed you is where we mainly have all the fabrics which we sell. These are some of the extra pieces I've picked up over the years. This cross stitch looks a little bit incongruous in the room. It's obviously quite a different aesthetic, but this was stitched for me by my granny, and she stitched it 2 years ago, 2022, when she was just 99. She's still stitching every single day, and she's sort of one of the biggest inspirations. She taught me how to sew, and therefore I have this hanging up in here because it's like my granny's presence in the room the whole time. So I'm going to end on my dirty secret, my storage area. And as I said, I'm quite a messy worker. I have obviously tidied for the studio tour. It doesn't usually look like this. And the way I tend to tidy is I just shove everything onto these shelves. These shelves are full of so much rubbish, but also quite a lot of quite important stuff. So this is where, say, I keep all my wool samples, or, as I said, back here, these pieces. These where I keep a load of my folders for inspiration. So in the most disorganised manner, quite imaginably, these are where I keep a load of the drawings and things that are going to go on to become designs. Some really absolute shockingly bad drawings. Pieces that have become embroideries, pieces that have become kits, designs for future kits. There's shelves and shelves in there of drawings, but then also folders of loads of patterned papers that I've made over the years, and I keep them all kind of stored away in these folders. These are a great way of having kind of colour inspiration. Or down here is where I keep a load of my inspiration sources. And so, as I said, I don't keep a scrapbook on the notice board, but I do have hundreds and hundreds of pictures I've photocopied or taken out of books over the years, and I keep them all in these folders. And then these are all hidden and snuck into these shelves back here. absolutely chaotically and really should be better looked after. But there you go, nobody's perfect. So there we go, this is my creative studio. This is my favourite place in the world to be. I'm surrounded by all my sources of inspiration, every single material I want to make with, and it's a space to just come up with new ideas, come up with new designs, to invite people into, to make with others. It's a really happy space and I hope you've enjoyed seeing it. The material source.